Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about emotional avoidance and what may be causing you to push those people you love away from you. Now, maybe you want to be in a loving relationship, but you're scared to get close to somebody. You're worried that you are going to be exposed, become vulnerable, get taken advantage of, or just simply get hurt. And so you act emotionally avoidant. You either stay unattached or you refuse to commit, or you may even just stay in a series of very light and superficial relationships. Well, if you can relate to this, or you know anybody else that it relates to, this teaching is going to be for you. We'll be discussing what causes you to push those people you love away from you, how to break this unhealthy habit of behavior so you can enjoy deeper, more fulfilling, more connected and loving relationships. Okay, David, now I know you work with a lot of individuals and couples on their relationship issues. What typically causes this emotionally avoidant behavior?
Well, this is an important subject for us to talk about because it hits right at the heart of our model. And as I say, I try my best to say on every video, so you get used to hearing this and you can think about this statement after the video. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. Now, that doesn't mean to say you shouldn't create emotions. Emotions are natural and normal, but you are creating them. They're not attacking you. You're not the victim of them. You don't have to avoid them. And this discussion will hit right at the heart of this teaching because so many people are grounding themselves in an emotional feeling and not in the truth, integrity, and honesty of their Shen. And we can develop this argument during this talk.
Okay, David. So are you saying that individuals who are acting emotionally avoidant in their relationships, so they're remaining distant, they're pushing people away, they're withdrawing, they're withholding, they're not communicating, is it because they are afraid? That's an emotion, but are they are afraid about the emotions, but you're saying, but they're creating the emotions that they're afraid of?
I think that really is the heart of the thing that we've got to talk about. And we can talk about what creates the emotion, because that goes on to another part of our model, the inner child. But whether they want to call it afraid, scared, vulnerable, overwhelmed, locked in, they will use all these emotional words to describe a really powerful emotional experience, but they're not accepting that they're creating the emotional experience. And so what they do, they flip and they try, and then they believe that the other person or the situation is creating the emotional experience inside of them. And so they push them away or they keep them at a distance. Basically, you won't like what I'm going to say. They try and control. They try and control. Now, a lot of my clients will be horrified when I say that, because they say, it's me, I'm the vulnerable one here. But actually what they're trying to do, paradoxically, is trying to control the other person to keep them emotionally protected or emotionally safe. But then if you go back to my original teaching, you are the creator of your emotions, not the victim. How can you be safe or protected from an emotion that only you are creating?
I would imagine, David, that when an emotionally avoidant person enters a relationship, they don't necessarily have the extreme red light, uncomfortable, painful emotions and feelings. It's only as the relationship develops that they start creating these emotional experiences. And that's when they want to withdraw. That's when they want to withhold. That's when they want to push people away. Is that true in your experience with your clients?
Yes, I would think as a generality. There's always, this is a unique thing, but as a generality, we have to talk in generality. This is what happens: is you create a feeling for someone, that a positive feeling that's called love. So remember, love is a description of an emotional feeling. So you create a positive emotional feeling called love with someone, but then it has to go a little bit deeper. And we've done many teachings on this. If you look at the archives, this idea of love and relationships. So you create the feeling of love, a very powerful, wonderful, positive feeling, but then you have to form a relationship. And look at the word, Alex. The word tells you what is the root word of relationships: the ability to relate, the ability to communicate. And the problem is, if you're grounding yourself in your emotions, all you're ever talking about is, I feel this, I feel that, I don't feel you're listening to me, I don't feel I'm understood, I don't feel this, you're making me scared. All you're doing is describing feelings and emotions rather than going back and talking about what is really happening.
So I'm kind of sensing what you're describing is there's like a tipping point that someone who has emotionally avoidant tendencies, behaviors, they can experience the feelings of love, bliss, joy, excitement, thrill at the beginning of a relationship.
So they create those as well.
They create those feelings. But then when the relationship gets deeper, and from what you're saying, there is more relating required, it's not so light, then there is a tipping point somewhere internally. Can we talk about what that tipping point may be that moves them from positive green light feelings to uncomfortable, painful red light feelings?
So this moves on to the second part of our model. This will always, well, nearly always, I can't say always because it's different for everyone, but it'll nearly always concern that part of the mind that we call the inner child. Now, you may want to call it your ego or your subconscious mind or the little devil that sits on your shoulder whispering negative self-talk to you. I like to call it the inner child. So you've just described it perfectly. You fall in love with somebody, you have positive green lights emotions, excitement, lust, all the green light emotions. But then as you move into a relationship and you have to start relating, and things don't always go the way that you believe they should go, then that part of your mind that we're calling the inner child basically kicks off. It starts to create negative red light feelings. What you said, it can be overwhelm, it can be fear, it can be anger, it can be the fear of rejection, it can be all of these type of confusing emotional feelings. And that's the part of the mind that you have to go down and address, because otherwise you just become the victim of the emotion rather than understanding and the creator of the belief that creates the emotion.
So what typically, if it's the inner child that is almost triggered at this tipping point where things become more serious, what is for the emotionally avoidant person, what is the inner child concerned about? What's that narrative?
And so the inner child is nearly always concerned about whether they're going to be rejected, whether they're going to be left, whether they're going to be abandoned, whether they're going to be loved, whether they're going to be made special. The inner child is almost a little bit codependent. It's always looking outside of itself, Alex, for validation, for approval, for worth. And so when your partner, as the relationship goes deeper and maybe more meaningful, if for whatever reason the partner isn't responding in the way the inner child believes is right, the inner child presses the emergency button and the red light starts to come. And then you as the adult then start to react and make decisions based on the emotion rather than the belief.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people would be surprised when hear you using the word codependency there, because most people would assume that emotionally avoidant behavior is kind of like the least codependent. In fact, that codependency and someone being their partner smothering them and being too dependent on them and too kind of demanding on them is the last thing an emotionally avoidant person wants. But what you're saying is, paradoxically, perversely, that there is a strong codependency there also with the emotionally avoidant individual.
Yes, because then when the inner child gets involved, Alex, the emotional pendulum takes control. So if it's not getting what it wants, if it's not getting this reassurance of its value, to be valued, to be worthy, then it will swing the opposite way and it will say, shut it off, close it down, I can't go any further. I'll be better on my own, get rid of them, and so the inner child then starts to do what I said at the beginning, this emotional protection or safety. It starts to build the barriers. It starts to build the carousel of despair going round. There I go. Why can't I find the right guy? Why can't I find the right woman? I knew this would happen. And it becomes, the inner child starts running then the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And it's very self-sabotaging.
It's extremely self-sabotaging, but the inner child will see a benefit in it. And the inner child will always see that it's better. Here comes a real important teaching. It's better if the inner child creates the pain. What it doesn't want, it's somebody else to create the pain. It's almost acceptable if the inner child's in control of creating the pain, but nobody else can. And so it goes into this very negative kind of spiral. As when I'm working with clients, it's almost like a quicksand. They get dragged down into this way of thinking. And it's a very difficult way of thinking to change and to move that energy out so the energy flows out.
And of course, for sure, if the inner child feels threatened and they want to withdraw or they want to run away first before the other partner deserts me or leaves me or abandons me, or I don't want to commit because I know I'm going to disappoint, all these things that the inner child says, it's like then the individual shuts down, then their partner tends to push forward into them, then the inner child feels like, oh no, this is getting even worse now. And then it becomes more self-fulfilling. Then they want to run away even faster. As one partner withdraws more, it's almost like the other partner can't understand what's happening, why there's no communication, why the flow of love stopped. And then it does spiral down, as you say.
Yes, and it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. And then again, here's how kind of, I want to use the word clever. I don't know whether it's clever, but the inner child is very clever, because then it will use that and it will say, well, there you go again. Oh, they're becoming possessive now. Or the partner will say, well, I'll pull away. And there you are. Look, they're pulling away again. So you put yourself into a no-win situation. And the inner child is running a program of self-preservation, of self-protection, of safety, emotional safety, because the inner child believes that emotional feelings are coming externally into them. I often think when I'm talking with clients, have you ever seen those old-fashioned medieval films where they all fire the arrows and they all come raining through the air? And it always seems to me that the inner child's believing that all these shower of arrows are coming towards them and they have to protect themselves from them. But when they cut themselves off, as really, then you haven't got a relationship. That's you're killing the whole of the basis of what a relationship is, the ability to relate. You're not relating. You're locked down, you're shut down in your bunker. You've got the doors closed, you've got the windows closed, you've got the curtains closed, you've got to sat here as in a corner. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then the inner child chirps up and says, there you are, look, I knew it was going to be like that. and then the process continues. And this is what we call the carousel of despair. You have to break that carousel, or this will keep on repeating all through your life because you're running the same belief system.
And all the while, as you said, blaming other people, blaming they were the wrong partner for me. It was them. They were too full on. They wanted too much. They were curtailing my identity. They were taking away my freedom. You know, the inner child of the emotionally avoidant person can have so many excuses and justifications.
So what do you think the other side of that is? So if the inner child blames them, sometimes it can swing to the opposite side. What would that look like?
That would be something like, I'm not good enough, I'm a disappointment, I'm going to let them down, so I might as well let them down now rather than in 5 years' time.
Exactly.
Well, they don't know the real me, and I don't want to that exposed. The real me is a horrible person.
Or when they find the real me, they'll be disappointed. And so therefore I don't want to enter into that. So there's the pendulum in full swing, swinging violently backwards and forwards. For some of my clients, it will get stuck on one side, stuck on either side. Or for some of my clients, it will swing. First of all, it will blame them, it will blame themselves. It will say, I'm not here, I can't get relationships, the relationships aren't for me. Then the inner child will compare, what we call CCJ. Oh, look, why have all my friends got great relationships and families, and here's me, I'm all by myself. I've got, you see, so the inner child running this scenario. And so this emotional pendulum is one of the most important things to understand when you're doing the inner child work. And this is what gets a lot of people confused, because they will recognize the one side, but not the other side. So they'll either be stuck in one of the sides, or they'll swing violently from one to the other. And really, Wu Wei wisdom, Wu Wei means we've got to find the center, the flow, the harmony. We've got to find the authenticness, not be stuck in the extremes.
So in order to find the center, that Wu Wei middle ground, do we need to look and find and unearth the origin of, if our inner child is running a survival strategy, it doesn't want to experience the emotional feelings, the overwhelm. Do we need to dig out and find the origin of this harmful self-sabotaging strategy? And is it in our childhood?
Yes, it nearly always is in our childhood. Again, I can't be every single time, but normally the seeds are sown in our childhood. And for some of my clients, it relates directly to childhood. So it will relate to the type of relationships you had with your close family or your extended family, or maybe the people that you would give authority to, maybe grandparents or teachers. So it's what the child is doing, quite rightly, is looking outside of itself for that love, reassurance, validation and worth, and it doesn't get it. And so therefore the inner child then will make what we call the vow. The vow is, there's something wrong with me. It can't be them, can it? So so say, for instance, I'll just run you a scenario. There's a big family bus stop and mother and father get divorced. And then the child will think, well, maybe I had a part to play in that. Maybe if I was a better child, maybe if I didn't play up, maybe I should have supported mother more or supported father more, or maybe I didn't support them correctly. It's amazing to me when I work with this scenario of the inner child, how quickly the inner child wants to be responsible for adults, particularly the ones that they love. It seems as though there's a part of the inner child believes that they are pivotal for the happiness of their parents. When we do this work, for many of my clients, the surprise is because the inner child relates to a time period between 6 years old and 9 years old. It's very surprising that when we get down there, the client will even be surprised at how the child is so responsible for the happiness of one or both of their parents. They believe it's their responsibility. And these are the beliefs these other beliefs are the core, the golden thread technique gets down to those core beliefs, because you cannot change what you don't understand. You have to understand it. And then you're in control. You can either change it or don't change it. But the first job is to find out what are the beliefs buried deep in that inner child part of your mind that's running your life right now. You may be a very successful person in other areas of your life. A lot of my clients are highly successful, but this emotional confusion that they're running is not allowing them to develop and to reach their true potential.
So what I'm hearing you say, David, is typically for people who struggle in their relationships, emotionally avoidant people, often, not always, there has been a situation or series of situations in their childhood where there's been a breakdown of family relations, or a perception of that person when they were a young child that the love was withdrawn, or that they were left or abandoned in some way, and they blame themselves. And for a lot of people, they have maybe as a young child wrongly assumed responsibility for what has happened. So parents splitting up, unhappiness in the family home, they've kind of blamed themselves. And so I'm kind of wondering whether in adulthood, that person then, if they become emotionally avoidant, it's almost like they're running away from the responsibility of an adult relationship, because when they wrongly assumed responsibility as a young child for what was going on with the adults, it was too much for them. It was overwhelming, and they don't want to be in that kind of situation again as an adult.
I think that's a good observation for a lot of my clients. They're running away from responsibility, from being accountable. And as I mentioned before, one of the things that part of your mind that I'm calling the inner child really dislikes immensely is what we call CCJ. CCJ for the inner child is very powerful, very destructive. It stands for criticizing, comparing, or being judgmental. And so when you go down deeper into relationship, as you said, from the superficial level, from going to the cinema, having fun, going to the movies, perhaps going on holiday, but then you get down to the nitty gritty and you're living your normal life. And maybe the partner says something that you perceive to be CCJ'd, criticized, compared, or being judgmental. That's almost like pressing the emergency button for that part of your mind. And immediately, the inner child will respond immediately with that and create immensely strong emotional feelings. Now, if you don't understand, you then become the victim of your emotional feelings. And so now, instead of acting from your intellect, from your knowledge, maybe having to address your partner saying, I think what you just said is inappropriate. You shouldn't say things like that. This is not going well. This conversation is not going well. You don't do that. What you do is you close down, you shut down, you move away, you create that separation. You break the relationship. See, and then it stops being a relationship. And then it will start to, it's like fighting for the higher ground and trying to protect yourself and scoring points. And then, as you said earlier, there's either the partner will either step in, or the partner will go, I just don't understand what's happening here. I just made a comment and you've gone crazy. And so the separation becomes more and more and more. And this is why it doesn't work. You've got to understand that basic teaching. I'm sorry to keep repeating it. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. Again, you are the creator. I'm not saying you shouldn't create them. I'm saying it's natural, it's normal to create emotions. But then you can't ground your decision-making and for your life journey on a consequence of what you believe. That's what emotions are. They're a consequence of what you believe. I've got to try and show you to go down to what you believe, and then we can discuss. And then you can take control of what you believe and why you believe it. Again, I'm going to repeat it. What do you believe about relationships? Why do you believe that? And it's the why is the most important.
And the why, am I right in thinking, has its origin in the childhood experience?
Nearly always in the childhood experience.
So
it's nearly always around that time. I've been doing this for over 45 years now, and I can say empirically that this age between 6 and 9 years old, it can't be exact. It could be 5 to 10, but 6 to 9 to me seems really relevant. That the beliefs that you develop then are usually the beliefs that are driving you now in relationships, in love, in building strong, healthy, flowing, what I would call Shen spiritual relationships, where you really trust the other person, where if they, she, or him do criticize you or say something wrong, you can address it calmly. You can say, sweetheart, that's not appropriate. It's not good when you talk to me like that. And you can go to the belief rather than reacting like a ping pong ball off the emotion.
Yeah. And so we've talked about some of the steps of the golden thread process there that you use with your clients, David. So the individual would start with their red light emotional feelings. So whether that's scared, vulnerable, angry, feeling threatened, feeling pressed down, all those feelings. Mm-hmm. Then you're saying, what is it you're thinking? What is it you're believing right now? And using the golden thread process, that's kind of self-inquiry questioning, asking why, getting down to the original core belief that was created in childhood, that vow almost. And so I know you've talked on many of the teachings about the 3 lies that are in this area. Do you want to talk about those in relation to the emotionally avoidant person?
Yeah, for those new subscribers, let's quickly, but you can look in the archives. We have plenty of teachings on the golden thread, and we do workshops as well as on the golden thread, because it's a very powerful technique that you can do for yourself. So as Alex just said, you start with the emotional feeling. So if you say, I feel scared. So I would want you, well, as what I say to my clients, let's say what I first say. They say, oh, we'll watch your videos, thank you. And I say, well, the first question, do you believe that you create your emotions? And nearly all of them say, intellectually, I do. Are you saying that as you're watching now? Intellectually, of course, emotions don't float around the room like a virus and attack me. And there's a problem. So intellectually, the grown-up knows that they create the emotion, but the inner child is still using the emotion. So that's where we start, and we get that right. And then once we get that right, this is what I prefer to say. I've just created a red light feeling. My next question is why? Then they will say, well, I believe, let's just choose one of the things that you could choose.
So it would be because I believe that they're being too demanding. My partner's being too demanding on me.
Okay. And why do you believe that's too demanding?
Because it's taking up too much of my time. I need my individuality, and they're just expecting too much of me.
Okay. And why can't you address that with them?
Because they should know. They're too demanding as a person. They should know that I need my space, and I can't give all of myself to them.
But how do you think they should know if you don't tell them? Maybe that's how they express their love for you.
Yeah, but I'm going to go back to the feelings, but it feels like too heavy, too much.
And then why have you chosen to create that red light feeling?
Because I've been here before and I've been hurt.
Okay. And who creates that hurt?
Well, I do, but I don't like it, and I want to
Uh,
avoid it
but
happening,
why?
because
But why
if
did
I
you
allow
create that?
myself to if I allow myself to get close, and
No. Why did you create the hurt?
I created the hurt because I don't know, I let people down, or they let me down. I got too
Mm-hmm.
close.
Mm-hmm. And if they let you down or you let them down, why would you create emotional pain for that?
Because it's painful if you
Yes, as you create pain, but why do you create the pain?
because it's because it's not nice when you love someone and you see that they're upset with you,
Mm-hmm.
or that
And
you fail them.
why don't you ask them as why they're upset with you?
Well, they tell me in no uncertain terms, and they blame me.
Okay.
When I was younger, my mother or my father was upset with me, and they blame me, and I don't want to be blamed again.
Okay. So we're right down to the inner child now. So this is the inner child talking. So for those of you watching, when you're talking to the inner child, you have to change the way. To get to the inner child, it's quite a battle. As you can see, the inner child will put in barriers and diversions and want to move you away. But when you get to the inner child, I would always recommend using a very, like you were talking to a 6-year-old, call him or her little one, sweetheart, darling. And so, so Alex is role playing here, so it's difficult for her. But I'm sure if you're watching this might be something that you say. So I would then say something right. Okay, sweetheart. So when your mother told you that she was disappointed with you, do you believe that that was your fault? Do you believe you should always please your mother?
Yes, I did that.
Mm-hmm. And why do you believe? And why do you believe you should always please your mother?
Because it was really important. And why wouldn't you want to please your parents? And why wouldn't you want your parents to love you?
So your parents loving you, my darling, you believe that's your responsibility to get your parents to love you?
Yeah, because I have to be a good girl. And I don't want to let them down, and I don't want them to be disappointed in me.
Exactly. So again, I'll just break off now. And so you see, this is exactly what I said. And I think Alex was trying her best to role play without just saying what I wanted her to say. You'll have to make your judgment on that. But you see how the inner child then has taken responsibility to get their parents to love her. She believes it's her responsibility to get the parents to love her. Then if her mother or father don't love her, then it has to be her fault. There has to be something wrong with me. And then to answer your question now, as we did the golden thread there, then this is deep in your belief system, that I have to get people to love me. It's my responsibility to get them to love me. And then that's how you'll be looking at relationships. Right at the core, you have that vow, there's something wrong with me. If somebody doesn't love me, there's something wrong with me. And then that's at the very core. I love what the Taoist says, like the kernel in the middle of the nut. That's the hard thing. It's been there right from childhood. And then the inner child starts to build up layers. The first layer it builds up is one with what we call in our model, the 3 lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable, maybe unworthy. And so if you've ever heard in your self-talk one of those 3 lies, I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unlovable, or I'm unworthy, then your inner child badly needs your help, because the inner child is trapped in that belief that it's their responsibility to get people to love them. And if they don't love them, if people don't love them, then they're at fault.
Would you say, David, that the emotionally avoidant person believes they're unlovable, and so they just don't want that unlovability exposed, or they just don't want the fact that they're a disappointment? They believe they're a disappointment. They don't want that exposed, or they believe that they just are not going to be able to cope and they don't want that exposed. So they'd rather withdraw, not commit, run away before they get exposed.
Yes, it's always difficult to answer that question directly, Alex, because of the pendulum. Yes, absolutely. They could believe, with my clients, I could believe that they're not deserving of love. They don't deserve a good relationship. They don't deserve a good woman or a good man. And then the other side, they think that it's going to go wrong. All the evidence they've seen around them is it's force. It's not going to work. They can't commit. This is one thing I hear a lot of. They can't commit. They want to hold something back as like an escape door to get out of the relationship. So they can go, there you are. I knew it wouldn't work, even though she's a great woman and she looks this and she's that. And I knew it wouldn't work. I knew it would fail. So this is why this emotional kind of education is so important, especially in relationships that we're talking about now, because then it gets so confusing with the emotional pendulum, because it's very hard to spot it, because it can be one side, I don't deserve it, or it can be the other side, I'm not going to take the risk. I will not be rejected. I do not want to put myself in that position again. It doesn't matter. I prefer to be on my own. It's safer. I'm more protected. I'm not exposed. I'm not vulnerable. And so this is why it's very difficult. For one person, it could be one side or the other side, the yin and the yang. For some people, it could swing violently. 1 minute they're one way and the next minute they're another way. And really our technique is to try and bring them in. And here's the life lesson. The life lesson of this video is to bring them into the center. Do not ground yourself, your life, your potential, your future. Do not ground that on an emotional feeling, because an emotional feeling is always the consequence of what you believe and what you think. So wouldn't it make more sense, rather than building your life, your future, your family, in whatever area we're particularly talking about relationships, but this could relate to your career, to your friendships, your friendship circles. This could relate to your studying. This could relate to learning a new skill. Don't build it on an emotion which can change it's like branches blowing in the wind. Grounded in your truth, honesty, and integrity of your belief system. And that's what I call Shen. What do you truly believe? What is it? And then why do you truly believe? And again, for those new subscribers, I'll give you what we call a Shen test. The Shen test is very easy. When you get to your belief and you say, right, okay, I've done what David suggested, and I've come to the belief that a child is responsible for their mother's happiness. Now, here's the Shen test. Imagine you have somebody you care for dearly, a niece or a nephew, and they come to you and they say, Auntie Alex, my mother says she's not very happy with me. I'm a disappointment to her. You would have to say to that darling little 6-year-old girl, well, she's right. It's your fault. There must be something wrong with you. If your mother's not happy, it's got to be your fault. And of course, you would never say that to that child. But then you say it to yourself. So that proves that that belief is not grounded in Shen, in that honesty, in that integrity. And once you can ground your beliefs in your Shen, I can guarantee your life will change, because now you'll be walking the path of Wu Wei. You'll be in your flow. You'll be authentic. And you won't be looking around comparing yourself with everybody else, grounded from an emotional feeling that changes like the wind's blowing through the trees.
Yeah. And so really what we're talking about here is really questioning and stress testing the beliefs about ourselves and relationships.
And that's why it's very important to separate the beliefs from the emotions, because you can't stress test a belief when the emotions are all confused in it.
So when we find those beliefs, we test them. So we separate the emotions, we dig down, we find the core beliefs, often originating in childhood experiences. We re-examine those childhood experiences and those conclusions we've drawn. We stress test the beliefs, and then we rewrite our story.
Yes.
In conversation with our inner child. And we've done so many teachings on how to do this inner child work, inner child communication. And I will put links to some of those in the show notes to help you with this.
And that's one of the reasons why I like the analogy of the inner child, because what I would like you to think about is the mature adult you is like the spiritual parent. And that part of your mind is not a monster. It's not something that has to be shut down. It's a beautiful child that's stuck. And it's almost like they're stuck on a hamster's wheel going round and around and round. And this is your opportunity to do for your inner child what their physical parents or family couldn't do. And this is why we, as Alex said, we've done many teachings. In our model, we call it reparenting. And it's going back and it's reparenting the child based on the truth, honesty, and integrity, Shen. And that will ground you in what you believe and why you believe. And then your course, it's like you're resetting your compass. Then, as Alex says, the story changes, the emotions change, and you start treading a new course. Now, you won't get it right the first day. Of course you won't. But now you're learning and you're growing and you're walking in fresh snow. You're walking fresh footsteps and you're starting to build up now. Instead of red light feelings, you'll be building up green light feelings, confidence, self-assurity, accountability, self-responsibility, and the greatest green light feeling, self-love. Because if you could believe in yourself, even a fraction of what I believe in you, and that's why I do these videos, then your life changes. Because instead of fighting and pushing away red light feelings, you'll be embracing green light feelings, positive feelings, to move you on much quicker than you've ever moved on before.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And we've also got a whole teaching playlist on love and relationships, which will talk much, much more about the subject, about the flow of love, about relating, about self-love, and what really the spiritual teaching on love is. And so I will also put a link to that in the show notes as well. I really hope you have enjoyed and benefited from this teaching. Please let us know what you think and perhaps share it with someone else who may also benefit. David works every week with clients all over the world on these sorts of issues by Zoom video call. And if you'd like to learn more about David's consultations, I will also put a link to learn more about those in the show notes. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.